Okay. Are we recording? Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Nakliva. I'm here with my friend Enrico Renz. Played together in Red Herring. Say hi, Enrico. Songwriter, inventor, and he's going to show me his invention here and describe it to me. But what you see in front of you here is a version of a guitar neck. So this would be down by the headstock, and that would be like the 0 fret, and then 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, up to 15. So it's kind of like a way of learning about the guitar, but also a game. We've also got various things over here, marbles of different sizes. So we're starting from point 0 in this here. I don't know anything about it, so you...
Well, I think that you mentioned that it's also a game board, or it could be a game board, is interesting. Because I know it could be, but you know, I have yet to come up with a nice, simple set of rules that make it interesting, and you know, you just play the game just for the fun of it. But by the end of having played it for a couple of weeks, you suddenly know the guitar neck inside out.
Right, so that would be a great way to do it, but right now it's sort of a way of illustrating concepts.
Well, we can talk about it. Like, for instance, could you if I give you a color scheme, could you follow the instructions and create this? Let's create a C major scale.
Take these small ones here.
No. I'm going to give you a specific color.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the light yellow.
Reminds me of the things about the Smarties. So
Yeah, I know. No, you have to be careful
Right.
not to eat these. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So the light yellow of this size here is
These ones here are the kind of...
the light yellow. Yeah, there's a darker yellow
Yes.
in there as well. So just take the light yellows.
Yeah.
And those are your C's. So can you put your C notes
well,
wherever you can find them?
Right, well, there's a C right there, and so that would be a C there. And then we should be able to go like that kind of thing. And then I think over there, I'm just going by the pattern, right?
Right.
Da, 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 da.
yeah.
These are kind of like the West Montgomery kind of things. And if that's a C there, that's a C there. And then I guess we can then carry on with that same idea. If that's there, then that's there. And if that one's there, then what's that one right there, I think? Right there, I think. And so then we got to see there. I think we're missing one. Missing a marble anyways. Seems like there should be a C somewhere in here. That's a different color here. Could be it, right? So now if I had a guitar in my hand, I could change, but without the guitar...
Well, did you notice that we have fret markers here?
Yeah.
Might you want to use that?
That's right. I'm still getting used to visualizing all
Right.
that. So if that's the 8, yeah, 8. Yeah, I think. Well, should I check it with the guitar, or should I just?
Well, you got this C
that's right,
here,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then your instinct is telling you there should be another C on the A string here.
Over here somewhere. I'm kind of having a feeling I might be missing something down here. But so we've got the octaves of the C. Now we're up at the up at the 8th fret. Da, da, da. And we got that one there.
So here is something that was a real, why didn't I think of this years ago moment for me is when I realized how useful fret markers are. But you got to spend a little time just internalizing the fret marker idea, right?
Oh yeah, this one be over here.
There we go.
Because we've
There we go.
we've basically gone up the octave. Yeah, yeah. I have to get kind of oriented here to this thing.
Yeah. Well, nice. But this is one thing that.
So of course that idea came from, again, sometimes I would show students, as a way of navigating the fretboard is and the idea of there's only a certain amount of shapes of octaves.
Yeah.
And if you know one,
Yeah.
then you can work out other ones.
Yeah.
And so it's a great
Yeah.
way of navigating the fretboard.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to realize just from this. First of all, to be able to do that takes a while to get there, right?
Right.
and to be able to see this while you're playing, and to wherever you are to comfortably be able to jump to any of these other things if this is your focal point.
Right.
That's a pretty useful thing to have.
Right, because each of these can be associated with a chord or a scale or modes or various things like that.
That's right.
That's the next thing,
So which octave shapes do you see most comfortably?
Yeah, I think all maybe this one here.
That one is definitely, I think, the sort of the first one that everybody figures out, right?
Because it's so related to power chords.
That's right.
Kind of how I often teach it as
yeah,
well.
Yeah.
People know the 3-note power chord, from the 2-note, the 3-note power chord.
1-5-1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can show them that. Well, plus I often one of the first things I would do is I would call it the octave riff. I would get people doing do 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 do, as a riff, and again get through the blues, and then move it over do 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 do, so do 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 do. We'll just do that do do do, 4 times. Right, and then move it over, start another one here, and then just take the, and then back, do, 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 and then I call it up and over. You're gonna go over, and you're gonna go up 2 frets. Yeah, do, 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 yeah.
That is such an important pattern.
Yeah, so a lot of times my beginning students, I can give them that little kind of pattern, and they're kind of learning how to move their fingers. They're learning about the 12-bar pattern, which is a great tool. And it has kind of a rock sound.
Yeah.
Crank it up, and it can sound pretty neat. And
yeah. And once they see that whenever you have the root, we're then seeing a 4th right in this relationship. So 4th here and a 4th here, and we're seeing the 5th right over here.
Right, now usually students at that point, they actually don't understand the 4th and 5th.
Right. That takes a while too, just to get that numbering system.
You
down,
know what I mean?
right?
Like what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already assuming that you understand scales, and someone showed you that. And typically the guitar students, they don't care about those things, or they haven't learned it. They just like that riff. But in the process, you can
sneak a little learning in there.
You can get them into that. What we can call this a 1. We'll go here and we'll call that the 4. and then when you go up and over, we'll call that the 5.
Yeah.
And we can use the Roman numerals.
Yeah.
So as a
Yeah.
shorthand.
And no explanation needed on why we're calling it the 4.
Yeah,
and
maybe
5.
at that point, just
But
like,
that's just their
like,
names, right?
yeah. And then maybe after a while, then you actually like introduce a scale.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I used to do it, as
Right.
opposed to like getting into scales right away, because typically guitar players, they want to get into playing.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
later on they want actually.
But man, knowing scales is such a.
Well, invariably what happens, I also get a lot of older students
Yeah.
that were kind of pretty good guitar players.
Yeah.
They knew the blues licks, right? They could play a bunch of songs, might even play in bands and everything, and improvise. Do all these things, and then they felt like they were kind of missing something. They didn't quite understand at all. They felt
Yeah.
blocked, and they would come to me for lessons.
Yeah.
Those are the people that I got onto the scale. They were ready for it.
Yeah. Right.
They're
right.
ready for they knew they were missing something,
Right,
and they're willing to okay, go back to the scale,
Yeah.
and learn some harmony,
Yeah.
because most of those people had never really had that,
I know.
so that, but they were ready,
Yeah.
and then that would open them up to
Yeah.
the whole world of music.
Oh yeah.
That by sort of just being guitaristic.
Yeah.
they
It's.
Unless you're intuitive or come from a musical background, or where you just can hear all these things and pick it up intuitively.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that,
But I think even if you have it intuitively, if you add this to your arsenal, it
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. It's like
Yes.
suddenly, like you're in the wilderness and you have all of these wilderness survival skills,
yes,
but suddenly somebody drops a map and you can read the map. That makes a big difference, whether you have the map in your head or not.
that's interesting. Where you've gone out there into that wilderness area, and you've kind of got to know places, and you got to know your way around.
Yeah.
And somebody says, "Oh,
Yeah,
there's a map,"
yeah.
or like, "Here's a Google."
So this is a
And-
core
and-
thing
yeah.
that you created right here, right? Like that's part of the map is you want to have this in your brain, right? You want, and then you work on getting your fingers to be able to go from any one of these points to any to somewhere else. But even just like when I learned this octave pattern, when I started learning it, it took me a while to twig into this. If we replace these big balls with the little balls.
Well, marbles is called.
Okay, watch this. There. Where am I going to put that? Yeah, I'll give that to you. There. Okay. What does that do for your mind?
Interesting. I see what you're doing. Well, I think that we started off by these ones actually being the same note. Yeah, it's actually the same pitch.
The same.
I mean, they're all the same note, but now the same octave.
The same.
or
That's
pitch.
that's right. Right.
And yeah. So right, which is always the mind-blowing thing to a lot of students.
Yeah.
Is that this is. It's like, oh, it's the same note.
Yeah.
That takes a while.
Yeah.
That's right. That's.
But now by just changing the size of these marbles here, I get a really good sense of not thinking of C as being an individual fret, but I see this diagonal just across here, right? And I just work on that one. To try to go from that note to this note, try to go from this note to this note, try to go from this note to this note, right? So that's what I've got. I've got this diagonal down. And then anytime I do something, for instance, I'm just going to go from here to this note and back. Then I can do this instantly over here.
Yeah.
And suddenly the guitar neck becomes a less frightening place because you have these
Right. Well, that's a very good
these
analogy
frameworks
of the
that
fighting, because that's why I say a lot of people, when they go up the neck, it's like going into deepest Africa or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's going like
Absolutely.
going off the grid.
Yeah.
And people maybe got their little area, you know, and then there's like, oh, don't know what's going on here. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be, like you say. So, you know.
this is of course, I know you've had this revelation, but at one point very late in my guitar career,
Yeah.
I realized that this is equal to this, right? This is just
Yeah.
a shrunk down version of this. And then you can, once you get that in your head, then okay, you can start working on it.
Right.
But it isn't
Yes.
until you've really, really worked on it that it becomes automatic. So one of the things that I really started to do was to work with fret markers. That was a project just in itself. So most guitars have a fret marker on fret 3, fret 5, fret 7, and fret 9, right? So just getting that into your head. But first, just like if we just lay this out, can you take some tiny little color of your choice?
Oh, I'll go with these red ones. Nice contrast.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so let's put them on the lowest string marked fret. So you already have it here all in black, but we'll just do it just to emphasize what's.
Or where the
Yeah,
fret markers are.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we lay it out like that, and let's put one on the open string as well. Do we have one more tiny red one? There we go. Okay, so this is actually unbelievable that this just happened, because in my color coding system, C is well, no, actually, never mind.
Okay.
Forget it. This I thought it was a fantastic coincidence, but it's not. So,
Okay.
But if you look at this pattern, seeing a minor third, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, minor third, right? Right. So. You know, on most guitars, if this neck were extended over here, this pattern would be repeated over here. But at this very particular distance, so this is going to be the same as that, right? So
Right.
we're having this pattern over here. So what I was training myself to do, for a number of reasons, but also just to get the fret numbers in my head, so that if I was reading tab, I would associate a number with a note, right? So just getting familiar,
Yeah.
because I remember avoiding studying frets, studying tab, because I once read a book where Mike Stern, it was a guitar greats book, everybody giving their advice with some samples and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Mike Stern saying, "Stay away from tab." And for years I never touched tab. Right? So then I had some catching up to do. So part of it was getting these numbers in my head. But so this simple math is that this is going to be equivalent to that, because this is fret 3, you're always going to add 12. So 3 plus 12 is 15, right? And then you're going to know that you're going to have this over here. These are odd numbers. 3,
Yes.
5, 7, 9. Keeping
Yes.
that in your head.
Yeah.
So this is matched with 15, 17, 19, 21. So
Yes.
so I might make a little game where I'm going between these 4 frets, but I'm saying these numbers. So I'm saying,
Yes.
this is like fret 21,
Sure.
this is like
Yeah.
fret 21, this is like
Yeah,
fret
yeah, yeah.
17, you
Yeah.
know?
That's
And then actually do little jumping exercises where I might just say, okay, I'm going to play something in G here, and then go right up here. There's a crazy guitar for this sort of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But just doing identical things back
Yeah.
and forth,
Well,
or having a conversation
Yeah.
back and forth.
Of course, you brought up the interesting thing is that even if you ran out of frets, the concept is there.
Yeah,
What you're doing.
yeah,
So if you have a guitar and you've actually run out of frets and you're trying to do something,
yeah,
well, it's still there,
yeah.
and you can still play that.
You just have to learn how to
You just have to
reposition
imagine.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or you can even just go off the fact that like you have a shape here and
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah,
a shape, and that
yeah.
as long as you start that root there,
yeah,
you know, even if it gets off the fretboard,
that's right.
if you know where that root is,
That's right.
that you got to squeeze the fingers in.
That's
a bit
right.
a bit closer.
So instead of
So-
using
so,
this
you know,
G here, we use this G here, and we play exactly the same pattern that we did here.
Yeah, and that can be useful sometimes for. Sometimes I'll go off there and play and either get a harmonic or get a sound.
You got that from Lenny Bro.
Well, of course, I got the idea from Lane Bro of having to do the.
But that's how you got.
Harmonics, but
That's
yeah.
how you. I remember you telling me once. That's how you got good at sensing the similarity between
Right,
these.
right, 'cause having
because
to
you
play
did a
the-
lot of
the octaves
yeah.
of those harmonics
Yeah.
an octave up. So then
Yeah.
I had to get used to those shapes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
great instant feedback, because if you're not getting it right, you don't hear the ding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
So, anyways,
Yes.
this was just a little aside for
Okay, yeah.
saying how important it is to get the fret markers, because these things are arranged logarithmically. If you look at the width of the frets down here compared to the width of them here, even if you understand that these shapes are the same as here, they're going to feel very differently because your fingers are squeezed together.
Now I'm understanding what's going on here too about how this feels a bit foreign, because we don't actually have this here. We don't have the fact that it's wider here and narrower, just like what you talked about. It's not actually represented.
Yes, that's right. This is purposely so that we're going to work with the abstract shapes, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to see that if you build. Okay, so here's
Yeah,
what
but you know what I'm
was.
saying is like that's what makes it more like a game board,
Yeah.
less look like a guitar neck.
Right, right.
Like if it actually
right,
went like that,
right.
you say, oh yeah, this is like guitar neck, but the fact that it's
Yeah.
not changing the shape.
Yeah,
That's what was throwing me off unconsciously. I didn't realize it until you mentioned that.
yeah.
That's-
No, my son, who actually made this
Yes.
for me, we debated that for a bit, whether we should make it like a guitar neck, which because he
Right.
could easily do that. He's got
Yes.
the machinery to do it.
Yeah.
But we thought we want to see the simple geometry. Like here is something that's very useful, right? So once you learn about triads, you know that that this is a major third here, right? And you know that this is a 5,
Yeah.
right? So by not shrinking it, we can instantly see, okay, if I can play that triad, then I can play it over here again, because it looks exactly the same. It's like a constellation, right? You can see that constellation. That's what's important, is seeing this relationship, right? But then we can also see, oh, if this is happening, then we have this same triad. So instead of going 1, 3, 5, I go 1, 3, 5. That means this shape must exist here as well, and indeed it does. The open G string gives you this shape again. All right. So that's why we didn't do the shrinking, because it would be more difficult to see. Here the shapes are exactly, what do they call it in geometry, congruent, right? So if you have congruent shapes, it must mean you get congruent sounds. Except, of course,
Right.
for the warp here. You know about the warp, right?
Well, the fact that we have a different interval.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's the big thing.
So if you were a student, I would say, put the third of this C onto this string.
Right. Well, I know where it's got to go. How would you describe that to a student?
Well,
The tuning of the...
yeah, one thing I would use the marbles to show how the guitar is tuned. Like for instance, I'd lay out a major scale here, and then I'd get a blue ball here. This A is blue, right?
Yeah.
And then we'd show, okay, from here on in, it's exactly the same as starting over here, and we put a blue ball there, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we show how all the tuning is the same, and then this string is warped. Everything is pushed up forward, because as you can see here,
Okay, so pushed
the
up
yellow,
forward, that's one way.
the yellow is underneath the purple, but on this string the yellow is not underneath the purple,
Yeah.
but everywhere
Okay.
else it is.
So if you think, that... right. So pushed forward
Yeah,
is one way to think about it. So as opposed to this going over here at an angle,
yeah,
it's now pushed forward.
that's same logic there, right?
So,
yeah,
so then it's
yeah.
just, sometimes it's good to have a rule.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And then the thing, of course, becomes practicing. So now you want to get the major third shape down on all string sets, on all string pairs, adjacent string pairs. You realize that on this string, it's this shape always, no matter where you're starting from. But when you get here, it changes,
Yeah.
right? But when you get back to this string, it's back to
Yes.
this again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you can give yourself exercises. You can say, okay, I'm going to play the same. I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to play this. So I should get C, E, C, E, right? And you just practice that. So wherever you're playing this, you try to do that, but not just getting the shape back and forth, but actually being able to say to yourself, this is the 1 and the 3, this is the 1 and the 3, right?
Yeah, and of course, at what point do you let people know that this? Of course, we're back to the scales. Obviously, that's a major third.
I would probably
Start
start with the major scale
Start
right
with scale,
away.
yeah. So then they see that that's a major
Yeah.
third because it's a, 2 full tones,
Yeah,
and so then you can
yeah,
get used to that.
yeah.
Well, we're going to pause here for a second, and thank you, Enrico. This was what we call an introduction.
It was so
To-
much
to
fun.
us, yeah,
So
yeah.
much fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely loving
Thank
it.
you.